Hello, everybody. Dariel here from the Florida Hockey Bros. My brother David couldn't record this week, but he'll be back later toward the trade deadline to break down any of the moves that happened this week and any interesting things, especially with the contending teams that are looking to add. So probably do some reaction videos or maybe do a longer one on Friday right at the deadline. But for now, I wanted to, going into this final week before teams have to decide what to do, I wanted to break down what some of the contending teams on each conference should do, in my opinion. Not sure, what my brother thinks about these teams and my opinion on them, but we'll see if he wants to leave a comment. But yeah, I'm basically going to go through each conference and just kind of break down where I think some of the contending teams are, anyone who's in the bubble and also in a playoff spot, and whether there are specific players or types of players that they should go after and why. And I'll try to sort of keep it brief for each one. And I was looking at, I have a list here from the Hockey writers that kind of have what they consider to be the top 30 players that could be traded, and other more names out there. But I kind of use that as a framework for some of these teams and the people that could go after. And I'll start out in the West. When I look at the bubble there and I look at Minnesota, which I would say is the bottom team right now that still technically would have a mathematical shot. Don't know if the Wild are going to make it. I probably would say that at this point that they won't, given their goal differential and how the season have gone. They've lost 3 in a row. I just don't think they have enough to make it this year. And I have to say, I think they're kind of in a tough spot. I don't know that they should be sellers. I don't know that they have a ton to sell at this point. I'd probably wait till the offseason to make decisions if I'm the Wild. But they're kind of stuck in the middle. They have some young talent for sure, some good players. I think they could compete and become a playoff team again. But I don't think in the near future they're going to become a top 4 or 5 team in the West unless they make some big drastic moves or decide to completely rebuild. They've been retooling and kind of had a similar team over the last few years, had a good defensive system, but this year that kind of broke down. And between that and injuries and the coaching change, I don't know, guys. I think they're kind of a little bit stuck. So if I'm them, I'm kind of staying pat and see if this team can kind of push. And then in the offseason, kind of decide exactly what you want to do. Do you want to go all the way into a rebuild? Do you want to just retool again? But they're going to have to make something, some kind of a move if they want to really elevate their play and compete, or give the young players time to develop. But yeah, the Wild, to me, I don't know that they can sell a ton, nor do I think they should buy at this point. I don't think it would make a big difference. The Kraken, to me, are in a similar spot, and they're kind of interesting. All the reports say that they're not willing to sell right now, that then they don't want to sell. They might want to keep some guys around, but they have a lot of UFAs and RFAs on their team. I think they overachieved last year, and we've seen that this year. They've been kind of in the bubble, but I just don't see them making a run again. And given the UFAs that they have, I would try to sell if I'm the Kraken and try to think about for next season, keep the guys that they really think can be part of the core, and then try to go after some UFAs or trades. But I think they can get a lot back if they sell, and they have a few names that people have been looking at, both on defense and offense. So if I'm them, I would just sell. I think if they don't sell and they keep most of their guys, I think they're going to regret it. I think they're going to lose some of those people in free agency. And I think rebuilding the team again into, quote unquote, a contender, though I don't think that they would have been necessarily a contender last year, but they did go into the second round and had 2 7-game series. So I don't know if they can replicate that with the roster that they have. They have a lot of the same guys. It's a kind of a feisty team, but if I'm them, I would just sell and then try to bring some bigger names and try to bring a little bit more talent, top end talent, to try to actually make a run. But yeah, if they don't sell, I see them regretting that in the offseason. I think they'll be able to replace some guys, but they'll be kind of in the same spot next season. So from them, sell, and then try to, in the offseason, use some of those assets to bring people back and sign some people and use the cap space. And the Blues, the same. I would sell and try to see if in the offseason they can kind of retool a bit to try to elevate their play. But, we've seen with the coaching change that it didn't, to my mind, make a huge difference. I think some of their top players and not want to sort of go into the battle the way that the team that was there a few years ago with some tougher guys. So yeah, with the Blues, if I'm them, honestly, I try to sell now and then try to retool in the offseason and try to bring, more consistent system, more toughness, and see if that can get them through. But I don't see them making a run or maybe even making the playoffs right now. The Flames are in kind of selling mode. I think Hannafin is gone. I don't know about other guys, but I think for now they're looking at the offseason as the big time for them to bring some people back. I am curious to see what happens with Hannafin and what they get back, whether they want to get assets or they actually want some players. And the teams that are interested in Hannafin, I think none of them have picks, so it would probably have to be prospects and players. But if I'm the Flames, I think it's okay. Just sell. They're playing better lately. That's great. That's gravy. Build on that, but really focus into the next few years. Then you get into the Kings, who I think had a hot start, then kind of went cold, have been kind of steady the last couple of weeks. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they'll be tough to play against because of the defense and the physicality. Something's missing, though, on that team. Some of it is the goaltending. Some of it is, I think, the Dubois trade was not a good trade in the end for them. So maybe they're a little bit stuck, and everybody thought that this year, next year are sort of their time to make a run. I think they can still do that with some of the players they have, but time's running out. So if I'm them, I just have to think, what do we really need to add? Do we need to add a goalie? It's a quickness. Like, what is it that you need to add to make a run right now? Maybe trust that hot start can replicate in the playoffs, but maybe not. They'll make a ton of moves. The Predators, I'm not a fan. In terms of a believer, I should say, not so much not a fan. I think the top line doesn't match up with other top lines in the league. I think they have a little bit more depth, but I just don't see it with them. I know that they're in a super hot streak right now after the whole incident of not going to see U2, which is hilarious. And Bruno is sort of a new coach as a head coach, but the Preds, I think, are going to compete. I just don't see them making a run. I think they need more depth, more top-end talent. I don't think that they're going to sell necessarily. I think Carrier, it's been mentioned as a guy that might trade. They might just make a couple moves, but anyway, I think that that's also another team that needs to build toward future years. I don't think that this is their year to make a run. And then you get into the top teams in the West. Golden Knights, with the injury to Mark Stone, I think they definitely have to add a top six player, and I think they're going to do that. They're going to use that cap space. Beyond that, I wouldn't do too much. I think they have to wait until the offseason and decide what to do with some guys. I think Marchessault, it's a UFA, I believe, so they'll have to decide what to do with some of those guys. But they got some veterans in there that they have to decide what to do with. And I think on defense as well, I think Martinez, they might be looking to replace him. But for now, I'd add a top six player. And then, if you can do the whole circumvent the cap thing for the playoffs, then they're going to have a deep team again, and you have to watch out for them in the playoffs. But right now they're struggling, so who knows? It can be hit or miss with them. We've seen them miss the playoffs before, so it'll be an interesting end to the season. But yeah, I'm then just add a top six guy, and who that is depends. There have been talks about Gensel, Tarasenko's out there. I think they could go after a guy like that, but because they do have the cap, I guess. But the assets is going to be the question. Are you willing to give up a first round pick for a rental? It's a big question for a lot of teams. First round pick plus. So we'll see what the Knights do. But from them, why not add a top six guys, see if that helps. Oilers are interesting. I've heard about wanting to add more scoring or a top six player. I think they need defense, and I think they need another goalie. To me, that's their biggest issue. They're very inconsistent on defense. They play kind of a run and gun, rely a lot on McDavid kind of offense. You've had some guys like Hyman with a great season. I know Kane in the playoffs is a tough player. But I think they need to add a very good defenseman and maybe another goalie to play with Skinner and see that actually helps them. But that, to me, I don't know that the scoring should be the issue with that team. They have a lot of talent up top. If that's not enough, then that's just something about your system and what's lacking. And if you can't not win with McDavid and Draisaitl and some of these other guys that you've added and some of the offensive talent on defense like Bouchard and stuff, I just think CZ and Nurse, they're very, very, they turn it over a lot and their liabilities in their playoffs. So we'll see what they do. But I think defense and goalie there. And the Canucks, I think, have enough depth. I know that there are rumors that want to make more moves and add another player, another top 6 guy. I don't know. They have a lot of talent to me. They've already made a couple of good moves. I know they want to move on from, they've been wanting to move on from Connor Garland, who's had actually a very solid season. But I think they have enough depth. They're just kind of a mix of younger players with a couple of veterans. So we'll see. I think they just need to build on what they did this year, get into the playoffs, get that experience. I know that they've been in first place for part of the season or a big part of the season, but don't expect to win the cup this year. I mean, if it happens, great. But if he doesn't, get experience for a lot of these young players. You just locked up Patterson, which is great. Just like keep it going, keep building toward the future. Don't make any desperate moves right now. Don't give up too much. You just give up stuff for Lindholm, possibly a rental. So just keep it going. I don't know that they need to do a ton. Avalanche, they need help. I will say I've watched them play. I know they're a great team. They're a top-heavy team. The top line is as good as any line. McCart is excellent. They have some other talent on defense, but a lot of it is offensive talent, a lot of skill. They had 27 giveaways against the Predators yesterday, I think, or the other day. They turn it over a lot. They play a lot of offensive speed, sort of attack kind of style. And I think against a forechecking team like the Kraken last year, I know that the Avalanche had a lot of injuries, but we saw them lose. I think they need a lot of bottom 6 help. I think they need more balance on the lineup to be able to play 4 lines, which you kind of need in the playoffs. So they need to find some of that and maybe a little bit of physicality on defense, I think. People who can block shots and stuff like that. Georgiev, I don't know if it's your guy on as a goalie, but I guess they might have to get him a veteran backup. That might not be a bad thing to bring in for the playoffs. But yeah, the Avalanche, I think, need a couple of guys in the bottom 6 in my mind to be able to really balance out the roster. Otherwise, I could see an early exit for them, even though they have a lot of talent. And then the Jets, they can't score that much. I mean, that to me, it's maybe the bigger question. Can they add a scorer? Can they add a little bit of speed to be able to help them with that? Obviously, defensively, they've been great, and the goaltending is excellent. So to me, it's a matter of adding scoring. Just, I don't know, and from a cap perspective, what they'll be able to do. And then finally, the Stars, they've made their move with Tanev. Thing with the Stars is that their style, they turn it over a little bit. They like to make a lot of passes. We saw it against Vegas, how they got pretty much dominated in that series. A lot of that young talent will be more experienced. They have depth now on defense, but to me, they're more of a team that is less about what you add, because I think they have a lot of talent, a lot of depth right now. It's about their style that they play. So to me, I will focus more on like the kind of style that you're going to be playing, especially against forechecking teams. So I'll be curious, how they do in the playoffs. But I don't know if they're going to make a ton more moves. Maybe one more move there. So that kind of takes care of the West. In terms of the East, the Penguins, I think, are done. I think they need to sell. It looks like they'll sell Gensel. Maybe Riley Smith is probably gone as well. I think Dubas said they need to get younger. That's probably what should have done in the offseason, but I guess they wanted to give him one more go, and that Carlson contract's going to be stuck there for a while. But yeah, if I'm then sell, try to get some prospects, some younger players, see if you can give it another couple of years with some of the contracts you got on the bets there to try to give it a go. But I don't see them making any kind of a run at this point. So I'm then sell and try to retool next year with some younger players. The Devils also, I think they overachieved last year. They kind of jumped the line in terms of where they were in the trajectory. And now, they're really struggling. They've had a lot of issues with health and injuries. But I also think their style, again, run and gun, a lot of talent at the back, young talent, but that style in the playoffs doesn't work. And I think this season we've seen that struggle, and the goaltending for sure. So they need to get a goalie, need to get a physical defenseman, somebody who can defend well as well, and then kind of retool for next year and really work on their style. And I have to say that is the one team right now that I would look at getting rid of the coach and bringing in somebody else and bringing in a new style, something more of a structure, because the talent's there. They got the speed, they got the skill. So bring somebody who can bring some experience, some structure to that team, get healthy, add some physicality, and I think that might might be better for them because they do need some toughness on the team to balance out with a very top end young talent that they have. Capitals, I don't think are going to make it. Same with the Islanders, the goal differential, and I know that they're sort of going hot and cold. They're going to be competing, but I think the East is kind of figured out, in my opinion. I think Tampa and Detroit, I don't see them falling off. I think there's enough there to carry them through. And so I'm going to go quickly on the East, and then I'm going to get into some of the names. I think Tampa's, as I said, is going to make it. I think they need to make a couple of moves. I think Hannafin has been linked to them. I'm thinking that's probably going to happen if somehow they can find the assets. But they definitely need a defenseman. I also think they need some scoring in the bottom six. So I'll get into some names soon. Detroit, I think, needs a little bit more playoff-ready toughness. We saw the game against the Panthers yesterday. They tried, to get tough, but they ended up taking penalties. They're not a team that's built for that. They like to make a lot of passes, and they need to kind of simplify their game a bit, and not be afraid to play a little bit more forecheck. They try to do a lot of cycle, a lot of passing, even on the power play, and you end up turning it over and getting frustrated against a physical team. So I do think they need to add a little bit of physicality there outside of Perron, and see if that helps them. Really, I think should sell. I think they're still on that retool at this point. I wouldn't even say it's a rebuild. I think they have a good enough team, but I would sell. So a lot of names have been mentioned. Maybe not Konechny. That's the guy maybe you keep, but or wait at least until next season to trade and get the most that you can back. But yeah, if I'm the Flyers, just sell the guys, some of the guys you have that you don't think you're gonna keep, and just build toward next season because you're on the way up, and you could definitely solidify yourself as a perennial playoff team starting next season. Even if I think they could still make it in this season. I see them still over the Islanders and the Caps, but I don't know that they need to buy or even stand pat. You can sell a couple of guys and still hope to make the playoffs with what's left. Carolina definitely need a goalie. I know Kochetkov has been better and all that, but I think they need probably a goalie and maybe another player. I don't know if that's a defenseman or what. There have been rumors about moving on from D'Angelo, but they need another player there. And the Rangers, they're slow. They're a really good team in terms of their veteran leadership and the scoring on the power play. They can really hurt you there. They got a great goal in Shesterkin. But man, I saw them against the Leafs yesterday, and they are so slow. They don't do a ton of cycle. At least they couldn't yesterday against the Leafs. So they really got to capitalize on mistakes and on the power play. And so I don't know if they're going to go deep, honestly. They need to have some speed. So some speed, to that middle six. Maybe that can help, some quickness there to help a little bit with the cycle and the forecheck. But yeah, that's my main concern with the Rangers. It's just the speed or the lack of speed that they have. I think in the playoffs that can hurt them. The Leafs need a center. I think if Domi is your center, I think Tavares too, who's older and not great defensively necessarily in the playoffs. I think you need to add a center to help move one of those two guys to the wing. And you also need another defenseman because, we've seen now Lyubushkin come in and get injured right away. So they need definitely a center and a defenseman there. The Bruins also need a center. I think that, Coyle and Saka are not going to be enough. I think they need to add somebody else. I don't know if that's going to be Scott Lawton or Henrique, but they need a guy who can play center in that middle six, and maybe a defenseman for them. And then the Panthers, they do need middle six scoring. Cousins has been moved around between the second and third line. He doesn't belong there. They need somebody there. And, Mahura is our seventh guy, hasn't played much this season. I'm okay with him, but I would rather have a veteran there. So maybe add a veteran defenseman. I don't know if you have to move one of those peripheral players out, but at the very least, a middle six forward who has more of a scoring touch, I think, and who maybe can get hot, will give you a key goal in the playoffs. I think that's what the Panthers need to do. So anyway, that's kind of a quick breakdown of what every team needs to do in terms of actual players, and who's on the list here and what teams can go after certain guys. I think Hannafin it's going to be either Tampa, maybe Florida. There's rumors that Cito's going hard after him. I don't know what Cito will be offering if they can sign him long term. I'm guessing if that happens, either Montour or Forsling are going to be gone in the offseason. But if that doesn't happen, then I think the Bruins is the other team that's been mentioned. I don't know if they have the assets. They do have some young players they could give up. So I think probably more likely that it'll be the Bruins or Tampa, and I think that's the right move for either team with a guy like Hannafin. Henrique can go to many teams. The Rangers have been mentioned, some teams out west, Edmonton. I do think that, the Leafs could use him. I think Bruins could use him. I don't know. I think there are a lot of teams out there that can use this guy. So we'll see who ends up going for him. He has a cap hit of 5.8. So if you don't have cap, you're going to need retention, and that's going to cost you. But definitely, a good serviceable player in terms of all the different things he can do and some experience. Gensel, top scorer. Tarasenko, kind of on the same boat. Gensel's obviously better, but I think it will come down to price for both of those guys and how much you have to give up, because I think they're likely going to be both rentals. So don't know what teams I've been talking about the Panthers going after Tarasenko. I think that's more possible only because the cost might not be as high unless somebody is willing to overpay. But I just don't see Cito overpaying for either one of these guys. We'll see. I think it's more likely that, Edmonton just gets, goes after Gensel. I think Tarasenko maybe goes to the Islanders, maybe back with the Rangers. We'll see who adds him. Could Carolina look to out a scorer if they can get some retention or move out D'Angelo? We'll see. And then from some of the other guys there, I think, Anthony Duclair is a guy that the Rangers could use in terms of the speed. I mentioned that need for speed there. There's certain players, certain teams like that. Even the Islanders could use some speed. I think a guy like that could help. Another guy who can bring a little bit of scoring is Vatrano. Frank Vatrano, I think, can go to any team and not going to give you a lot of defense, a lot of passing, but can give you some goals in the playoffs the way he's been playing. So, maybe there are teams like the Jets that could use the scoring. So a guy like Vatrano could be a fit, but again, you have to make the money work. Nick Dowd has been mentioned. He's bottom six center. Scott Lawn, I kind of see him as a third line center. Again, could that be the Bruins? Could that be the Rangers? Could that even be Colorado? To add some bottom six depth, possibly. I think there. Tyler Toffoli is a name. If the Devils decide to sell, who would be a good rental in my opinion as well. A scorer, another guy that the Panthers could look at, but again, price might be too high given the season he's had. So we'll see. And then there are guys that I think are harder to move. I just don't know if ultimately people are going to pay Sean Walker money, not money, but what Philadelphia is asking for him. I don't know if teams will give that up, which never is the same. Supposedly they're asking for 2 first-round picks. I don't know that you should give that up in the trade deadlines, maybe in the offseason. Chychrun the same. I think Chychrun is a guy that I would love the Panthers to go after in the offseason. Again, we maybe lose Montour, depending on how much money people are asking for, but Chychrun is a guy who's younger. I would go after him in the offseason. I don't know that he'll get moved in that right now. Alex Wemberg the same. If Seattle doesn't want to sell, I don't know if he'll go. Another defenseman that some teams could use is Matt Dumba. I know that money may not work, but surprised the Leafs weren't looking into him. I think he could have been a fit there. I think he'd be a fit with the Bruins. Could be a fit with a few teams who might need another defenseman who's tough but can also move the puck. And then Jordan Eberle, he's a sneaky sort of veteran name that I think a lot of teams could use. Even the Panthers, I think, could use a guy like Eberle. But again, $5.5 million. So most teams will need retention for that. And I don't know if Seattle, again, they're stuck and don't want to sell. Outside of that, Jason Zucker, $5 million, that's a lot for a veteran. You probably need retention for a guy like that, kind of maybe a middle six guy who with more talent can give you some scoring, but not like a big name. So anyway, it's not a great sort of trade deadline list of names that are available outside of some of the top guys, honestly. But yeah, this is the time of year for just adding those pieces, those touches. We'll we'll see who teams add. We'll see whether there are a lot of moves this week. The big picture stuff I'll say is that I think most teams who can sell either are holding onto the assets and asking for a lot because they still think that they have a shot, but also because, there isn't a lot out there. So they're trying to figure out if they can keep pumping up the price and then the buyers can get desperate. I think the opposite will happen. I think that the market's going to get a little bit flooded. There are a lot of UFAs and some RFAs out there that teams may not want to keep necessarily, even with the cap going up. So I wonder if by the last 2 days of the deadline, prior to the deadline, like the floodgates kind of open when some teams realize I got to sell, like I'm either in the bubble, I'm not going to make the playoffs, and I don't want to be left with a bunch of UFAs that I lose, and all of a sudden I gotta figure out what to do. So I wonder if some of those prices are going to go down the closer we get. Maybe not for every player, but for some of them, it's like Pittsburgh's got to move Gensel. Like, it makes no sense for them to keep him. Tarasenko, same with Ottawa. You can't keep that. Hanifin obviously one's out. Henrique's been mentioned too much not to be traded. Duclair is probably going to get moved. So anyway, I think there are enough names out there like Dowd. They should trade him. He's 33. That team isn't going to go far now. So, I just wonder if some of those prices do drop because people just want to get something in return if the buyers hold steady and don't panic. And all of a sudden, the market is flooded with, there are some good serviceable players that haven't even been mentioned on this list that a team could add. There's like Yamamoto, Tatar, like those guys in the bottom six can maybe give you some scoring in the right situation and have a rebound by Ivanov, has been mentioned. The Panthers have been interested, supposedly, and a few other teams. Those kinds of guys in the middle six could help. And so there are a lot of options out there outside of the top players in terms of serviceable guys you could use for a run. Maybe not so much on defense, but again, Madumba, that's not bad. Carrier, that's not bad. Joel Edmondson, that's not bad. So anyway, there is enough there where I think the market could get flooded because I don't know there are a ton of buyers. Most buyers don't have either cap or first round picks or tons of assets usually. So it is going to get interesting. So my advice to GMs who are buying, hold the line, be patient, and hopefully prices drop at the end and you can then, go after one or two guys that you need. But anyway, still the floods haven't opened yet. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, just a quick, fast breakdown. Leave your comments, questions, your own opinions about this stuff. Who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, it'll be an interesting trade deadline because, again, not a ton of assets or a ton of players, not a ton of assets to give away by the top teams, by most of them. And, there are a lot of teams that have a shot of winning this year, and also some top teams that could lose in the first round. So, all right, guys, that's all for now. We'll leave more videos and reactions maybe later this week, and especially by the trade deadline. Thank you again for watching. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, keep supporting this. We'll definitely keep this going through the playoffs. And yeah, appreciate the support, comments, anything you can leave. And yeah, we'll see you next time.